Nick Walker earned his IFBB Pro card back in 2020. He first tested the waters that year at the Chicago Pro, where he finished 4th. After taking the rest of the season off, he came back in 2021 with what is still arguably the best year of his career. He won the New York Pro, dominated the Arnold Classic, and then made his Mr. Olympia debut, finishing in 5th place. Now, finishing 5th at your very first Olympia is an incredible achievement. Better than what many legends of the sport accomplished in their debuts. But this was also the first time Nick Walker got screwed. The top 3 that year was pretty much untouchable. Big Ronnie, Brandon Curry, and Hadi Choopan had those spots locked up. The only athlete who realistically had the tools to challenge that trio was Nick Walker. Instead, the judges dropped him into the second call-out alongside Hunter Labrada. And not only that, they actually placed Hunter ahead of Nick. In my opinion, that was the first major judging mistake of Nick Walker's career and the beginning of a pattern that would continue over the following years. But as always, don't just take my word for it. Today we're revisiting Nick Walker versus Hunter Labrada at the 2021 Mr. Olympia, going through all 8 mandatory poses one by one, and by the end you can decide for yourself whether Nick Walker really deserved only 5th place. So without further ado, let's get into the comparison. Front double biceps, and this picture is taken from the actual second call-out they were involved in. We can notice that Hunter does indeed have the better overall flow, but that's always been the case with Nick. We all know he doesn't have the ideal proportions. However, when it comes to muscularity and especially conditioning, Nick was way ahead of Hunter. Let's bring up these higher quality shots, and now it should be more than obvious who was in better shape. Now, of course, Hunter has great arms too, and they're nicely defined. We can also appreciate his superior quad sweep. However, when it comes to definition, Nick wins both the upper body and the lower body. His midsection is simply so much better, with those deeply defined crunched abs. And of course, Nick's arms are the cherry on top. I actually believe his arms were even more impressive back then than they are today. All in all, I'm sure there will be the overall flow fanatics arguing for Hunter, but this pose goes to Nick Walker in my books. Front lat spread is next, and this is actually a pretty unfortunate look for Nick. Even though his waist was probably the tightest it had ever been at this show because he tried something new by sucking his stomach in, the way he positioned his arms and legs doesn't do him any favors. If anything, it only accentuates how top-heavy he looks. Hunter isn't particularly impressive in this pose either. His lats are actually weaker than Nick's, and he doesn't have Nick's level of polish. But he's carried by his superior genetics when it comes to proportions. His longer limbs and shorter torso simply create a better overall look in the front lat spread. So even though Nick is clearly in better shape, the front lat spread goes to Hunter Labrada. Side chest is next, and now we have a much tougher pose to judge. Even though Nick has the better conditioning and the superior arms and shoulders, Hunter has more fullness through the chest and the lower body. Let's bring up the higher quality pictures, and it becomes clear that Nick may have dieted down just a little too much for this show. He's lacking a bit of fullness through the chest and also in the lower body. Even so, I still think he presents the better overall look. Hunter appears rounder but simply not stage ready enough, and that's the thing with modern bodybuilding after the bubble gut era. Everyone is so focused on overall flow that we sometimes forget competitors actually need to be in shape on stage. It's almost as if having a smaller waist or simply looking fuller has become more important than being properly conditioned and defined. The side chest is definitely a close pose between these two, but I still give the edge to Nick Walker. Back double biceps is next, and by now it should become clearer and clearer just how much of a screw job Nick Walker was on the receiving end of at this show. Even though his back poses weren't quite as dominant as they are today, they were still among the best in the world. Nick has always had an incredible lower body from the back, and his back itself has always been one of his strongest assets. Hunter is simply losing everything here. Nick wins the actual back, the arms and shoulders, and the lower body. The only thing Hunter has over Nick in this pose is the calves. But unfortunately, nobody has ever won a back pose based on calves alone while losing everything else. Especially since Nick's calves are actually pretty decent themselves. It's not like we're comparing him to someone like Derek Lunsford. After the first 4 poses, Nick Walker is already leading Hunter Labrada 3-1. Back lat spread is next, And it would be easy to look at Nick and say he was too narrow or that his back still needed a lot of work back then. That's probably the main reason people believe he couldn't crack the top 3 at his Olympia debut. However, when you compare him to the guy who actually beat him that day, the picture changes completely. Hunter looks even weaker from the back, his lats insert much higher, and he's lacking the muscle definition and separation in the upper body that Nick clearly has. We've also already established that Nick is winning the lower body from the back, so I don't think there's much more to add here. Nick Walker convincingly wins both back poses in this comparison. Side triceps is next, and what an interesting display we have here. Both of them use the Dorian-esque leg stance, showcasing their calves. In that department, Hunter is better. He's still probably one of the best in the world today when it comes to calf development. Aside from Neckzilla, who could very well be called Calfzilla as well. Back to Hunter versus Nick, both of them put on great displays. They both have impressive lateral heads. Nick's might be a bit thicker, but Hunter's is better defined. Both also have great midsections, but I prefer Hunter's presentation. He turns a bit more towards the front, showcasing more overall width, and then there's the vascularity where the chest meets the shoulders. It's a real wow factor look from Hunter. Overall, I believe Hunter wins the side triceps against Nick here. Abs and thighs is next. And back then, Nick Walker's abs were flat, clean, and nicely defined. Hunter, on the other hand, has very little definition through the midsection and has to adopt this different stance just to showcase his obliques, which themselves are still pretty soft. Hunter is indeed winning the quads. Nick really needed more quad size back then. He still needs more today, but he's improved a lot in that department. So even though Hunter has the superior overall flow, he's not able to hit the conventional version of the pose. And even with this variation, he's simply not convincing because he's lacking almost any sign of muscle definition through his core. Nick Walker wins the abs and thighs, extending his lead to 5-2. Most muscular is next, and even though Hunter has a really nice shape in this pose, he simply doesn't have the level of definition that Nick brings here. Hunter does have the superior chest, and I really like that vascularity running through it, but at the same time his left pec tear is pretty obvious and has to be taken into account as well. Everywhere else I prefer Nick. He has the more complete arms and shoulders, the more defined midsection, and the more polished lower body. So yes, Hunter may have had the superior shape throughout this comparison, but who doesn't against Nick? The difference is that Hunter simply doesn't bring the muscle definition, separation, or conditioning that Nick does. On top of that, he's holding considerably more water. For me, that makes this a pretty straightforward decision. Nick Walker wins the most muscular as well. In the end, Nick Walker wins this comparison 6-2 on poses against Hunter Labrada, proving the very first screw job we're revisiting in this new series. And trust me, this is only the beginning. Throughout this series, we'll be revisiting every major screw job of Nick Walker's career. And as you'll see, it's almost every major show he's competed in. Next up, we'll go back to the 2022 Mr. Olympia, where Nick Walker was placed behind Lunsford. So if you don't want to miss that one, make sure you stay tuned.